Hello, I'm Leonard Maltin, and we're here at the legendary Formosa Cafe, which is an official landmark now in Hollywood, and is just around the corner from the old Samuel Goldwyn studio, where a great movie called Some Like It Hot was made over 40 years ago. That's hard to believe. And I'm sitting with another legend, a living legend, Tony Curtis, the co-star of that movie. Tony,
Leonard,
great to
you're
see
too
you.
kind.
I'm just telling the truth, Tony.
Well,
That's
at least
all.
I'm alive.
That's right. That's right. But you've lived through a lot of interesting years. I mean, you were
including this booth.
including this booth, I'm sure.
Yeah, there were a
This is
lot
what
of
they
stuff.
call the Maryland booth,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, there were a few other people that sat in it.
I'm sure of that.
Yeah, but
Now, did you hang out here? Was this?
oh yes, but we were doing Some Like It Hot. If we finished early enough, Jack and I had come over. We'd get out of our ladies' dresses, and Marilyn would get out of her lady dress and dress up like a guy. And so, it was a perfect combination. We would meet here after shooting and have a drink, and a lot of extras, a lot of extra girls. I don't mean extra girls, but
Yes.
a lot of girls that worked extra. Beautiful young women would come in here, and most of the guys from the studio, Grips. Yeah, the place was really jumping with a lot of intriguing people. I always liked it because it was a wonderful place to gather the different varieties of workers.
the social strata of
Yeah,
Hollywood, the
right.
working strata.
The working strata. You know, we were all workers. I mean, there was no if you didn't want to be part of it, you didn't come in here. It was nice.
Do you remember the very first time you heard about Some Like It Hot? How it was pitched to you?
Yes. Harold Mirisch had a house on Lexington Drive up in Beverly Hills, and he used to run movies on the weekends. Harold came out of Milwaukee and made Hershey chocolate bars, and he decided to become a producer. I don't know how he arranged it with United Artists, but the first thing he knows, he's out producing movies. He produced one film that I was in earlier called Beachhead, and it made a lot of money for everybody, and they were pleased with it. Harold says to me, "Come over a half hour earlier. Billy wants to talk to you." Well, I was thrilled. I wanted to talk to these guys. I wanted to be with Willie Wyler and all those outstanding film directors, Not that the directors I was working with weren't any good, but they didn't have a flair. They didn't have a touch for the material. So I go see Billy at Harold's house. He pulls me in a room. He said, "I'm going to make a movie of two guys that have to dress up as women because they see a murder, and they join a girls' band. I'm getting Frank Sinatra and you and Mitzi Gaynor." I said, "Anything you say, sir." About a week later, he called me. He says, "I'm changing it. It's going to be you, Jack Lemmon, who I saw in a movie and I think he's excellent, and Marilyn Monroe, were it possible to get her, because she was very elusive and in a lot of trouble. This was 57, okay? Those were difficult years for Marilyn, starting around 56. Her personal life overwhelmed her career.
Yeah.
There are more shots of her coming in and out of hospitals, courtrooms, crying. That's what made Marilyn so vulnerable, and people loved her for that because she allowed them to see that. And so by 56 and 57, when we started that concept, Billy knew that there would not be trouble with Marilyn, but he had to slow down the whole thing. And you only as strong as the weakest link. He told Jack and me, he said, "Whenever she gets it right, I'm going to print it. So keep your fingers out of places you don't want them to be." And so this was a lot of, I won't say pressure. I loved it. This was like joining the Foreign Legion and working,
Well, let's so it starts with a meeting. And,
Yes.
And you were the first one signed on then, essentially.
Yes, I was the first one that signed on. And we went down to San Diego, to the Coronado Hotel, and started shooting there.
So that's where it began, on the location.
The location.
Okay.
Marilyn was in excellent shape and condition then, All the lines came out easy. Jack and I there had to, on two occasions, dress up as women, but most of the time, no, I came in as a woman, and then I had to come out as the millionaire. And when Jack and I were in the hallways, I was Joe, the musician, with Jack. So it wasn't complicated, but I had to work it out really carefully in my own head, so I knew where I was. It was only on the beach shooting there that we're shooting the beach scene when Billy said, "What shall we do for the millionaire?" I said, well, Billy, the people in the movie would know my voice. The people watching the movie wouldn't. But I'd like to do something different. He said, what would you do? I said, well, maybe I could talk a little bit like this. He said, well, do it, Tony. I said, I shall. So I took Cary Grant and manipulated him a little bit, turned him into a New York gangster, and that's how it started. I mean, we just improvised it right there.
Well, that was an inspired idea.
Wasn't it wonderful?
Yeah.
Wonderful for me. In fact, Billy loved it so much in it. When I'm in the bathtub, Jack looks at it and he says, that accent, nobody talks like that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, the Del Coronado was a perfect choice, too, because it's frozen in time.
Frozen in time.
And so for a 20s period picture, you
And
didn't have to do
another reason, he didn't want to travel with Marilyn.
Uh-huh.
He wanted to keep it simple, a Cars Day journey. She was then under the auspices of Paula Strasberg and Lee Strasberg, you know, and she would do a shot, and she wouldn't look at you, she'd look at Paula. And if Paula nodded her head, then, you know, and Billy caught that on very early, right in the middle of a scene once he said, cut. He says, how was that for you, Paula? That was the end of Paula. There was no more, you know, no more Paula in that sense. And the picture progressed like that, you know. He watched it very, very carefully.
Was it at all strange to be on such a public location and have, you know, sightseers, tourists?
No, not for me.
Walking out?
I've always enjoyed it. I mean, I never found it a problem for me. But you know, between Jack and Marilyn, you know, Marilyn would come into a shot, shaking her hand, saying, "Relax, relax." Relax. Jack would come in and say, magic time, magic time. Jesus, man, it was, I was stuck between these two people, you know?
I know. Startling exception was having to learn to not just look, but behave like a woman.
Yes. Well, you know, all of us are half man, half woman. Some of us more than others, right? And we got a female impersonator who showed us one thing that I never forgot. He said, when you lift your hand like this, you get a muscle, see? But when you twist your hand down, the muscle disappears, so you must walk around with your hands like this.
Very interesting.
And when your step goes to the left, your hip goes to the left. I learned that from Mae West. Mae West used big wedgies, so when she stepped, she'd come up and see me sometime. So I just remembered that. It was really easy. It wasn't big. It was the clothing that we had to be careful with.
Why?
Well, because they took us to Western costumes, and they put me in a Debbie Reynolds dress, and then a Janie Powell. The waists were too high or too low, and Jack was ending up in Norma Shear's dresses. I ended up in a Loretta Young outfit. So I said, Jack, we can't wear this stuff. It'll kill it. I mean, you know, it'll give it away right away. So I went to Billy Wilder. Jack said, I'm not going to ask him. I said, I'll ask him. Then I went to Billy Wilder and I asked him, I said, could Ori Kelly make our clothes? He said, yes. Well, we got so excited.
Well, one of the top fashion
The
designers.
best.
in
And
Hollywood.
imagine two guys getting clothes made by Ori Kelly. That's, in its own way, a really nice thing. And one day at Goldwyn Studio across the street, the soundstage doesn't exist anymore, but dressing rooms do. He came over and went from one to the other, Jack, me, and then Marilyn. And we had dressing rooms then. Jack came out in his shorts, and Ori had a tape that he'd whip out. You know, one of those tapes? Yeah, the guy would sit down on the ground with a paper and pencil, and Ori would measure. So he measured Jack 14, 34, 15, 97, 88, 43. The guy wrote it down. Then he came to me, and I was in the equivalent of Calvin Klein's in those days, right? So he took the tape and he measured me around the waist, 30, 31, the back 34, sleeves 34 and a half. Took every bit of my measurements, waist, everything. Then he went to Marilyn, who was in the next dressing room. Now, Ori told me the story. I remember the first part. I wasn't there for that. Second, and she comes out in a blouse and a pair of panties. And this guy squats down, Ori throws the tape out, starts measuring Marilyn. 26, 14, 37. He gets to a bottom, and he measures it. He looks up at her and he says, you know, Marilyn, Tony's got a better looking ass than you. She looked at him, opened the blouse, said he doesn't have tits like these.